Welcome back to the Legislative Lounge. My name is Nathan Bigelow. I'm your host. Now, my co-host Mike couldn't make it in today, but we have some brilliant minds with us today. And Caleb Holmes, he is the chairman of the Texas Republican, or High School Republicans. And then we also have our good friend from the Patriots Den, Patrick. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Good.
Absolutely. It's great to be on Radio DaBang one more time.
Absolutely. And we definitely give a shout out to Radio DaBang and allowing us to be here again. But a lot's been going on lately. I mean, over this last week, President Trump has been trying to do, well, over the last couple months, essentially, but he's been doing a lot of work with, the courts because a lot of them are really, starting to step into place in areas where I believe, and per the Constitution, they don't have the jurisdiction. And honestly, the realm of, the USAID, and when it comes to birthright citizenship, there's a lot of different moving parts that the president's really trying to take a look at and step into the realm of him being the president itself and what his duties are. But it seems like the courts nowadays are trying to really act as if they have some kind of superseding power, in my sense. What is your take on it, Patrick?
Absolutely. I believe that we are now in a time in politics where everyone has that big head on their shoulders. And what we see right now with the courts is they're trying to be the ones to say we're taking on the beast, we're taking on the monster, which is President Donald Trump. Right. We saw it in New York. Letitia James, the attorney general there, she wanted to play that role of taking on the monster, taking on the beast, which is President Donald Trump. And how did that work out for her? It didn't work at all. So now that he's president, you have these Democrat judges who are going to, I guess, stand up to quote unquote dictatorship and tyranny, and they want to fight and, throw, Trump out of power.
Right.
Well, like I said, I 100% agree. Listen, on November 5th, the American people, we've all heard it, delivered a mandate. The Republicans won the House, they won the Senate, they won the presidency, and the Democrats have nothing. So what they're doing right now, they're trying to politicize the courts. They've lost the American vote, so now they're trying to supersede it with judicial power and trying to take over an entire branch of government. And we saw that in the last final days of the Biden administration. In those last final days, President Biden appointed a record number of federal judges, and the Senate confirmed a record number of federal judges. It was not because they didn't want the nominations to die. It's because they had lost in an overwhelming mandate, and they needed something. They needed some sort of gotcha. They needed some sort of power to hold on to because they had lost it with the American people, which is how the system is supposed to work. When you do bad things, you lose, and you're not in power. They couldn't let go of that, and that now we see that their entire plan in motion right now.
Absolutely. And I mean, like I say, when you take a look at the judges that are in the inferior courts, as the Constitution starts to talk about it a little bit in Article 1 and 3, it talks about, the separation between an Article 1 judge versus an Article 3 judge. Those that know that the Supreme Court is the all end be all, right? When it comes to the constitutionality of any kind of executive order or law in general, it goes up to the Supreme Court, and what they say is final. The problem is you have these inferior courts and these judges that are actually appointed through the Article 1 that are acting in the capacity of an Article 3 judge and thinking that they have jurisdiction over constitutional matters. And the problem is they don't. Now you have other judges out here that are Article 3 judges, like Judge Theodore Chu, who actually is just been introduced that there's going to be legislation or acts that are put forth to have him removed from office. So taking a look at these judges, like more specifically, he's looking at the USAID information and how he's trying to say that the president doesn't have the authority to shut this down, doesn't have the authority to remove the employees that are currently in place. But in all actuality, it is a branch or an agency of the executive branch that was established through executive order, and people don't understand the difference between an agency that was established through legislation through Congress versus an executive order. Those that are done through executive order, the full power of those agencies are in the behest of the president, as the Constitution gives, all authority of the executive branch. Now, there are some nuances to agencies that are established through the legislative means. Most of them are, but there are actually 6 individual agencies, I should say, that were established through the executive order process and still are being upheld. Now, some of them do have legislation that later on came, but that doesn't that doesn't give the power to the legislative branch or some kind of pseudo power to the judicial branch. All the executive branch is, it goes through the president. And a lot of people don't know about this because there's been arguments back and forth with people online and just individuals in Senate or Congress in general, and they're saying that the president doesn't have executive order just to oust these. Well, and there is no executive order that has established agencies. Well, I've had that argument with individuals saying that there's actually 6 of them. And to quickly go through them, I'll give a little bit of a history recap so that people can know and have a little bit of backbone on their end, saying that there was agencies. The Department of Energy was established in 1977 from President Carter through Executive Order 12009. Department of Veteran Affairs was established in 1930 by President Hoover by Executive Order 5398. The Environmental Protection Agency was established in 1970 by President Nixon through Executive Order EPA 1110.2. And the Office of Personnel Management was established through President Carter in 1978 through Executive Order 12107. The Department of Health and Human Services was established in 1953 by President Eisenhower. Now, there's a little bit of a conversation around that one in particular because when it initially was started, it was under a different executive order, and it was the Health, Wellness, and Education Department. And when 1971, I believe, when they established the Department of Education, that's when it was renamed into the Health and Human Services, but again, started by an executive order. And finally, the USAID was established in 1961 by President Kennedy through Executive Order 10973. So taking a look at these particular executive orders, we can establish that, first of all, the claim that there's no branch agency of the executive branch that hasn't been established by executive order, this in itself defeats that narrative that a lot of people in Congress are even trying to say. And it's the ignorance of people in Congress that tends to feed off into people in the United States. And knowing this information, it tends to really beg the question of what is Congress' what's their motive? Because obviously they know this information, or they should know this information. So what do you think congressional members are doing when they're not giving full context or full understanding?
Well, that's how they've been doing it. They love to tell one side of the story. Like I said, in the final days of the Biden administration, President Biden declared a constitutional amendment passed. I think it was the I forget which amendment it was. I think it was the Equal Protection Amendment or something close to that title. He declared that passed. There was no question from the Democratic Party of whether or not this was legal or whether or not this was constitutional or whether or not this is something that he could just declare passed. There was not. They said, well, it went through this process, it was passed. However, now that it's President Trump, there's a Republican House, there's a Republican Senate, there's a different rhetoric, there's a different story. Now they're unelected bureaucrats. Now there's all of these things of constitutionality, and now there's judges stepping in, but there wasn't then, just months before this transition happened. The ulterior motive of the people in Congress, senators, and all of these congressmen and women is power. It is fear-mongering, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to bring in the fundraising donations. Having that fear within the American people, it's going to bring in the voters. It's going to advance their careers. That is all that they care about. And I want to mention something specifically. We saw recently during President Trump's joint session of Congress, we saw that Representative Al Green from the Houston area, his antics, I believe is the best way to put it, is his antics were not because he was genuinely upset. That's not true, because at the end of the day, they're all making backroom deals with each other, each and every member of Congress, especially Representative Al Green, who has some of the most lobbyist funded lobby money coming into his office. At the end of the day, it's about advancing his career. And the more we give them the spotlight, the more they're going to continue to do it. That's what I believe is their ulterior motive.
Absolutely. And Patrick?
Absolutely. Right now, on the Patriots Den, we would have called this kazoo theater. This is the kazoo orchestra right now.
I like that.
It sounds good, right? You say, you know what, maybe the president does have too much power, right? That's just the first thing. But then when you actually dive into it, you say, wait a minute. This is the highest job in the land. Maybe he actually does have this much power. And so what we're seeing the Democrats do right now is they're laying out a foundation, because you got to remember, the Democrats, I feel bad for them sometimes. I do. Because look what happened in November. You lost the popular vote. You lost all 7 swing states. You lost the Electoral College. You lost the Senate. You lost the House. You don't have the Supreme Court. And the thing that you wanted to walk away with, which was dignity, you lost that too, because your candidate couldn't even come out the night before to speak.
Right.
So they have lost everything. And so right now the Democrats are trying to find themselves. And in finding themselves, instead of finding themselves, they're trying to bring the Republican Party down to their level and try to take away the dignity and the respect the people have for the Republican Party to try to even out the playing field. And what we have to do is, that's why I love things like this, the Legislative Lounge, or Patriots in, the Chris Heasley Show, where we come in and we say, wait a minute, folks, that's not what's happening. This is the truth of the matter, right? No one else is going to sit there in Congress and lay out the orders and the different departments made by president like you just did. They're not going to do it because it's not beneficial to them, and they don't care, Republicans and Democrats, which is why you have AOC and Bernie Sanders right now parading around the country on this weird little tour that they have going on. Tim Walz parading around the country, going on this little tour that they have on. There's only one Democrat who has what it takes and stood up and said, you know what? What's happening in our party is not right. We need to turn around. We're going too far left. The American people aren't happy with it. And it was the man who I least expected it to be, Gavin Newsom. When he stood at the table with Charlie Kirk and he said, you know what? I don't think men should be in women's sports. You know what? I agree. We lost simply because of policy. We lost because we didn't have what it takes. And when he did that, they threw him to the side. Now they want to bring AOC, Bernie Sanders, Tim Walz walking around saying he's going to beat up Trump supporters because they don't have they don't have anything else going for them besides political kazoo theater.
Right, absolutely. And now you get to the point where they're just trying to make it seem as though, the president doesn't have the power he has, right? And through these, like, more specifically, the biggest thing of the last month or so has been the whole situation with USAID, right? And how the president is trying to shut it down and that he doesn't have the authority over it. And we've already determined through executive order the president has that authority to do so. But they're trying to bring it through and saying, oh, the president doesn't have unilateral power to make these changes because of legislation around it. However, there's already an established court case through the Supreme Court way back as far as the 1930s that it already says that the president has full authority over all employees in the executive branch outside of one particular area, which if you take a look, the court case in question is Humphrey's executor versus the United States. And just some history behind it, just so those that know, Mr. Humphreys was a commissioner at the Federal Trade Commission who was appointed by President Hoover and was Senate confirmed. And in 1933, when President Roosevelt took power as the president, it was later on it came out that President Roosevelt and Humphreys didn't see eye to eye on things. Obviously, they come from two different political backgrounds. One was appointed by a Democrat, so we can assume that Humphrey was a Democrat himself. And honestly, if you take a look back at that time, he was very outspoken about it. President Roosevelt didn't like him, didn't like how he was doing things, and he essentially fired him in the end, right? And it wasn't until after Mr. Humphreys passed away that his executor came forward and sued the United States over the process of how in which he was removed from the office, because Humphreys was asked for a resignation through Roosevelt, but he refused to do it and continuously just showed up every day to the Federal Trade Commission doing his job until Roosevelt fired him. Because Humphreys was completely against the situation, didn't like what Roosevelt was doing as well. Well, later on after he passed, the executor came forward and was like, hey, we're suing the United States because of how he was fired. In this court case, it was established by the Supreme Court that the President of the United States has full authority over the employees of the executive branch outside of the Federal Trade Commission, because the fact that the Federal Trade Commission acts as a quasi-judicial and quasi-legislative portion of the executive branch. So they have that ability to not only establish policy, but also create, but also to enforce it. So the FTC kind of acts as an independence outside. And now I know there's independent agencies, but when I say independent, they act outside of the executive branch, unlike other independent agencies. So because of this, it was ruled in Humphrey's favor. But in that ruling, it specifically establishes the authority of the United States president to have full jurisdiction of the executors and everybody below the executors of each agency through the executive branch. But now you're seeing people forget about things like this, and I can't wait until these court cases get to the Supreme Court and this information does come out finally, because honestly, a lot of people are believing what the Democrats have to say on a continuous basis without understanding how things are written. I mean, just hearing that information, what are your thoughts on it, Patrick?
Absolutely. One of the things that I learned at a very young age, I'll never forget it. I was in high school, and it was my math teacher. And she looked at me and she said, reading is fundamental. The problem that a lot of people have is they don't want to read. They don't want to take the time to go understand what they're actually arguing. They like the idea of being in the streets, parading around, saying corruption, 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 but they don't want to take the time out to go look and read to see if what they're talking about is actually corruption and what is actual corruption, so they can actually go and yell about something that would actually make a change about something.
Right.
A lot of people right now, we all know the phrase, we all know the saying, they have TDS. They have the Trump derangement syndrome. And so Trump, like he said at the joint sessions, like you said, he could come out right now and, say, we've just discovered the cure to the world's greatest disease. And they'll say, nope, that's corruption. He's lying. He didn't actually do it. In fact, we watched as President Trump said, look, there's this kid up there. He has brain cancer. And he wants to be a police officer. We're going to put him in the Secret Service. And they looked at the kid and looked back. And Democrats after said, that was a political stunt. Really? A kid with brain cancer? A political stunt? They don't care.
No.
You can pull up all the court cases you want. You can pull up all the numbers you want. They don't care, which is why you got to have someone to go to the average American and say, hey, look, you keep listening to the kazoo orchestra back here as they, blow hot air, and, at the end of the day, they still get their check. Or are you going to follow the truth and vote on what's keeping this country on track, right? They're making a lot of noise, they're making a lot of complaints, but they don't want to talk about how the economy is bouncing back right now. Eggs have hit the lowest price they've had in the last 4 years. Gas hitting the lowest price it has in the last 4 years, right? We're seeing the government is actually becoming efficient. We're starting to find, okay, wait a minute, why are we spending money, $900,000 on hammers? Why are we doing that? We're actually starting to see accountability and transparency in our government. They don't want you to know that because a hit dog will holler, and they know once everything is unclosed, they're the problem.
Right, absolutely. And that's my whole point, is that, the Democrats know, or it seems like they're feeding out the fact that they know that most Americans don't actually read anything, right? Outside of what they're told through the news or headlines and whatnot. So with that in mind, I mean, Caleb, what do you think is the real motive, I guess you could say, for them knowing that and understanding the information that we just went over?
Absolutely. It is of the utmost importance for the American people to pay attention not to the headlines, not to the mainstream, not to the establishment media, but to the facts. Pay attention to the information that is actually, that you can back up, that you can tell, okay, as a matter of fact, I can see right here, egg prices are going down. We can see right here, oil is at an all-time low. Gas is going down. That you could 100% know without a shadow of a doubt that there's any tampering with that information.
Right.
That is what the American people need to pay more attention to, and stop listening to these Congress people who are deranged, who have their entire motive right now is just to find a new way to make a headline. That's all they care about, because they're all setting something up for their next run, or they're trying to seek in higher office. That's what the Democrats are playing right now. Like we were just talking, like Patrick mentioned just recently, AOC and Bernie Sanders. They're one of the loudest people, and they're on a nationwide tour going to all of these states. I mean, they can sell out a high school gym, but they can't seem to lower the prices in the Bronx. I mean, her district, and the rent is unbelievable, and it's not because of President Trump. He continues to deliver on his promises and make the economy go down, but it's because of crime running rampant in the city of New York, crime running rampant in the Bronx, and she's not going to do anything about it because, well, they're just delusion. They're scared. The criminals, they're scared. That's what it is. She does not know that the Bronx is one of the most violent places in terms of crime. She thinks they're all good friends. They all sing Kumbaya and hold hands running down the streets. She does not care, and she spends more time on nationwide tours, not only in her own from more times on these tours, not in her constituency, not in Congress, but going out talking to people, hoping that she can gain some more money. And that is the issue with these Congress people. They'll get on the news, they'll do all this talking, they'll do all this rhetoric, and then they won't deliver on anything. Then they won't make up for any of their promises. And then they'll just blame it on somebody else, like they're doing right now with President Trump.
Right, and I mean, it almost seems twofold with the Democrat Party. It seems as if there's two things that they're really focused on. The fact that obviously they understand people don't read, and they kind of hone in on that and try and give these, statements that aren't actually giving the full truth, but at the same time not fully lying. But then also, we all know, they like to play the identity politics. And this is kind of a cool trio here, just because we are of the minority group, and we see people trying to feed to us all the time, because you're black or you're Hispanic native, you're hated by the Republicans. And that seems to be the biggest thing by the Democrats that we continuously see. And because of that, the latest thing in the news right now is this whole issue with an executive order from President Trump causing segregation to come back. I know you guys have heard a little bit about it, so what are your thoughts on it, Patrick?
Absolutely. I was, like we were talking about earlier, I was at the Houston rodeo. Good friend of mine messages me and says, hey, Trump bringing back segregation, I'm starting to regret my vote. And I said, well, first of all, it's not how that works. No. You can't, the president of the United States, I don't care who is in power or how it happens, cannot just be like, hey guys, by the way, segregation's back.
Right.
It's not how that works. Then he sent me the article, and it was a headline, and it was so funny to me. It was so funny to me because the picture on the article was a picture of a blacks-only restroom from NASA, from a movie that came out called Hidden Figures, right? So they took a picture from a movie called Hidden Figures, and they put it in. Hidden Figures is a movie about when America was trying to go to space, these black women who helped do it during segregation. Granted, okay, yes, that happened. But you used an article from a movie from when America first went to space and John F. Kennedy was the president to try to talk about Trump and an executive order that he signed that removed, DEI, basically is what it was. The removal of DEI does not mean segregation is back. The problem that we're seeing, though, is there are a lot of people in the minority communities who have a victimhood mentality.
Right.
And the victimhood mentality is boosted and uplifted by the white savior mentality. So we have two problems right now at hand. And so when you have the white savior mentality, which I personally think is the most racist mentality you can have, because how can you as a white person look at anyone at this table and say, hey, simply because of the color of your skin or the origin of where you come from, you can't succeed. I'm better than you, and I'm sorry.
Right.
That's literally what they're saying. And black people are like, you know what? You're so right. You're so right. I can't succeed because you're better than me. I accept your apology. What? And so DEI getting removed, all that means is, hey, you don't get by simply because of what you look like. You actually got to go out and work hard and have an ethic. You can't be lazy. You got to get up and do something.
Right.
And if not being lazy and making you get up and do something is segregation, then we have it's in your mind, and then we have a bigger problem at hand.
Absolutely. The same question to you.
Absolutely. I looked it up right here. An article from The Nation News. The cover of it was a picture from a civil rights museum with a clearly brand new. It's not even a historical sign where it says white drinking fountains and black drinking fountains. So it's all it's a theater. Like Patrick said, it's a theater. And it is 100% based. It's a mentality that is happening in the African American community, and I think it is much worse than any policy that President Trump could implement. That because this mentality is been single-handedly crippling the black community for decades. And we continue to preach for progress, and we continue to preach for making sure that, there are no discrepancies within integration into the everyday society. And I say right now, in present day America, there is no level of legal inequality. There is no inequality within black communities and within white America. We all have the same rights down to the core. So I'm 100% confused on why we still think it's okay for us to get handouts. No one should ever want to be given something that you didn't work for. And that is what is killing us with things like Medicaid and Medicare that are set to run out very, very soon. And we see that we continuously rely on these things instead of trying to find ways so that we can ourselves fund ourselves. And I think that it's a big thing, especially when we start seeing people talk about things like Democratic members of Congress say President Trump is cutting Medicaid. He's cutting Medicare. Well, I'm not going to say I'm against it at all, because we just found out that there's people still in Medicaid and Medicare that are 120 years old, that are 130 years old or 150 years old. I think one guy, he said, was born nearly in the 1800s, or late 1800s, that are still on the Medicare rolls. Yes, we should start thinking about why this is an issue in our country, why we continue to see the cost of living go up. And we continue to see Medicaid go up, but we aren't seeing any progress into bringing these people and bringing that economic prosperity into those communities without having to rely on government. And I think that is the main issue that we have right now. And I think that's what we need to start addressing before we can start calling President Trump racist.
Absolutely. And we're definitely going to be getting into the economics, because I've got a theory that I've read online that I want to run across you guys. But to bring clarity to this whole situation, which I find funny that it's just over the last week or so, they're starting to talk about this segregation coming back, because this is stemming from an executive order from the second day he was president, back on January 21st. And it's the Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunities. And somehow, I don't know how they were able to maneuver the language in this, but they're trying to say that this is the particular EO where he's bringing back segregation. But if you simply just read the very first paragraph of this executive order, it's quite literally saying the exact opposite. It's the first paragraph, section 1, and I'm going to read it so everybody can hear it. It says purpose. Purpose. It's the actual purpose of this executive order. Long-standing federal civil rights laws protect individual Americans from discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. These civil rights protections serve as a bedrock supporting equality of opportunity for all Americans. As president, I have a solemn duty to ensure these laws are enforced for the benefit of all Americans. So, I mean, right there, from the very start of this executive order, he's saying, I'm establishing all of the Civil Rights Acts, which means that everything that they're saying about segregation goes out the window, because that's the sole purpose of the Civil Rights Act and a lot of different areas of that. But you can even go even further into it, into Section 3, where it's talking here in Section B, or Section 3, Portion B, it says the federal contracting process shall be streamlined to enhance speed and efficiency, reduce costs, and require federal contractors and subcontractors to comply with civil rights laws. So I don't know where they're getting the confusion of how civil segregation is coming back through those basic areas. I mean, what do you think, Patrick? Or I'm sorry, Caleb, where they're getting this from?
I mean, like I said, they're getting it from their members of Congress. They're getting it from people like AOC and the Squad. They don't look into the information. They see the headlines. They see their members of Congress on MSNBC or CNN or Meet the Press. They hear them talk about it and say, okay, well, that's the truth. My member of Congress said it, so I should probably listen to what they're saying. And a lot of them are liars. And I think we need to address that first. And that is a big thing. We saw when Trump eliminated the horrid DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that were in the government agencies and in federal agencies, and we're seeing that companies are now starting to follow through. And everybody was like, oh, he's racist. He doesn't want black people to have the same equality. They don't want to have the same opportunity. But they forget that at the end of the day, the average and the most beneficiary from DEI was not African Americans. It was not Hispanic Americans. It was the white woman. That was the number one beneficiary of DEI. Right. And it's not because there were more white women applying. No, it was because if you were qualified, then you got the job, whether you were black, white, whatever these things were. And people they took that into account. They don't care if you're black. They don't care if you're white. They don't care if you're Hispanic. They don't care if you're gay, if you're straight. If you're qualified, you can get a job. And that is what we have brought back to America. Now we're going to see members of all communities, of all races, of all ethnicities going out to getting more education. We're going to see a more educated society. We're going to see a more work-driven society instead of a society who believes that they have handouts. I know we're all familiar with we may be familiar with the show House of Cards,
yes.
With Frank Underwood, where in his great address he said, "You are entitled to nothing." And that is true. We are not entitled to anything. And when we get that mentality out of our head, then we will have a better America and a better society.
Right. Absolutely. And you said it just perfectly. That people are just feeding this from the people in Congress, supposed to be our representatives, the ones that are supposed to know what this stuff says. Right. But they're blatantly lying. Right. And Patrick, why do you think that they're doing, where are they getting their information essentially, do you think, in your mind? Because honestly, when you read this, it's quite clear that it doesn't have anything to do with it. I mean, are the representatives just unwilling to read, or are they blatantly lying to the American people?
They're blatantly lying to the American people. Caleb, I like that you ended off with you are entitled to nothing. We don't have to word anything the way you want to word it. We don't have to give it to you the way we want to give it to you. Because I looked up the USA Today article and this is the title of the article. Trump admin no longer requires ban on segregated facilities in government contracts. That sounds like, wait a minute, Trump, what are you doing? You literally scroll. First paragraph of the article says, the Trump administration is no longer requiring an explicit prohibition of segregated facilities in new government contracts. The February 5th memo from the U.S. General Service Administration was first reported by NPR Tuesday. Third paragraph. Segregation is still illegal in the U.S., and the memo states contractors are still subject to laws on civil rights and non-discrimination.
Right.
Wait a minute, but you just said that he no longer required. Attorney General, not Attorney General, but he wishes he was Attorney General. Attorney Ben Crump comes out and says it's enabling segregation. Turns out, all he did was he removed the explicit wording of saying you cannot segregate in government contracts. He removed that part and just said you have to follow the non-discrimination and civil rights laws of the United States.
Right.
Which is no segregation. But they're mad because the word segregation was removed. You're entitled to nothing, as Caleb just said. That's really what it is. So they're blatantly lying.
Right.
It's dog whistles. They're trying to hype the people up. And when the people go read, how many people are actually going into the third paragraph? Not many. And the news articles, they're slick with it. You know, you click on your article and you scroll just a little bit and they give you this big message. They're like, hey, 99 cents a month and you can finish reading this article. I'm not paying your 99 cents. And you get out the article, right? Not me. I'll pay your little 99 cents because I want the truth, right? The truth has no price tag, right? So I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to get what the actual truth is. And now my question goes to, why the blatant lies? What do you benefit from blatantly lying? Because when it turns around and people go back and look and say, wait a minute, you said this was going to happen and it never happened. So you're wrong. They're right.
Right, and that's been the detriment of the Democrat Party and why they lost so dramatically is because the American people are starting to wake up and realize, like, hey, I'm actually reading this. And that's why we advocate so much on the Legislative Lounge. Stop believing what they say on Congress, regardless of what letter's next to their name. I don't care, because I'm willing to call out a Republican if they're wrong as well.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows how I feel about Dan Crenshaw, if you've ever watched the show. That's just me. But in regards to all of that, it's stop reading just the headlines or just paragraphs in general of articles. Go read the legislation. Like that memo. A lot of people don't know that memo was a derivative from Section 3.B of this executive order on the 25th of January, because it quite literally is talking about what it says in that memo. But people don't want to correlate those two. They just want to be able to be spoon-fed things, and then when they go into debates with individuals through social media and whatnot, like I do, they get completely dismantled by just pulling up the information. So we always advocate to those that are listening, go read the legislation. Go read the actual executive order. Stop relying on your representatives, because we've caught them no matter what their article or what their letter is next to their name, but go read what they're talking about, because we've caught them lying repeatedly. Read the executive orders and then correlate them together. That's how you're going to educate yourself, and we're going to be better off as a nation. But moving into a new area, though, too, because Caleb, you said a moment ago that we need to really start focusing on the economy, because that's where we as a nation are going to get better, because that was one of the hot topics through the 24 election, is how is our economy going to get better? And it goes simultaneously with fighting all of this, because you got to keep people's minds on what is actually important, because in 2025, there's no such thing as racial inequality. I don't care who you are. There's just not. You have every opportunity that I have, no matter what your background is. Now, you might have to overcome more because you might come from a more impoverished area, but that doesn't mean you don't have the ability to move past it. But what we need to really focus on is what is going on. What is the president doing in regards to trade that's going to set us up for the future? And honestly, right now, I think Donald Trump is knocking it out of the park, because the news refuses to admit the deals that he's making with these companies and the deals that he's making with other countries to come into America and invest is one of the biggest movements that's going to explode our economy by the end of this year into next year, especially because you have trillions of dollars that are being invested over the next 2, 3, even into 10 years. And we see Apple coming back here and going to invest over $500 billion into Texas alone, which is going to is estimated over the next 2 years create 30,000 jobs just in Austin. And then you have places like Honda, who's decided, hey, we're going to take advantage of being able to write off more because of what Donald Trump's allowing us to do. So we're going to expand our new EV operations in the state of Indiana. So that's going to explode jobs there. And you have all these other areas that countries that are investing in, especially like the UAE. They've just announced, I believe it was yesterday or Thursday, Donald Trump announced a new partnership with them where the UAE, or the United Arab Emirates, are going to invest, they're increasing their investment up to $1.4 trillion over the next 10 years alone, which they're going to actually focus on their U.S.-based energy capital partners. They unveiled a $25 billion plan that focuses on energy infrastructure and data centers. So that alone is going to create a massive overhaul of new jobs coming into America. And also, they're going to expand their natural gas and production of exports here in the United States. They're planning to create a brand new smelting manufacturing plant for aluminum, which is one of the biggest things that's been an issue with Canada, right? Their biggest trade to us outside of crude oil is steel and aluminum, and that's what they've kind of been fighting for us. A brand new smelting, which is going to absolutely explode our exports when it comes to that, because that's one of our smallest exports right now in the United States. I mean, from knowing this information, how do you guys see Donald Trump's plan of action? How is it setting up America for the future, Patrick?
Absolutely. Donald Trump is a businessman, not a politician. And he said it in his joint address. He said, we didn't need any new legislation. He didn't write a bill for that. He said, we didn't need any new legislation, any new policies. We just needed a new president. And that's exactly what it is. We just needed a new president. Donald Trump is a businessman. He's been making business decisions all his life. Donald Trump took a small loan, as he likes to call it, a small loan of $1 million, and he turned it into a multi-billion-dollar company, the Trump Organization. The Trump was a household name, right? It got so bad to the point that Barack Obama, when he was in college, he was asked to write, what is American success? Who do you think he wrote about? Donald J. Trump.
Oh, wow.
Because that, at the time, was what American success looked like. So we have someone in the White House who has been making these kind of deals all his life. The big numbers don't scare him because he's got it in his pocket. So that's why we're able to see that our economy, it's in good hands.
Right.
Because he's treating the United States of America like it's a business. Sometimes you got to fire an employee. That's what he's doing. You're not doing your job right, you got to go. Right? He's not looking at this as, what are the government workers going to do? Go get a new job. That's what you go do. You go get a new job. Okay.
Nobody wants to talk about how inflationary those jobs are,
right.
too.
Like, goodbye. I go to Walmart and the lines are always closed because they don't have enough cashiers. So, come to the local Walmart by my house and you do your job. Come check me out because it's getting out of hand.
Right.
And so that's what Trump's doing. He's saying, you're not doing your job, you got to go. He's going to these other companies and say, yeah, that's nice what you're saying, but remember where you're getting your stuff from.
Right.
It's coming from us. So let's make a good little deal here. Great book. He wrote a book about it, Trump, The Art of the Deal. He knows what he's doing because he's been doing it all his life. So there is no surprise. There is no shocker. He's been getting the backlash for it all his life. And so when I see what Trump is doing, I'm saying, yep, that's about what I expected. I'm not surprised by it because that's what I voted for.
Right. And absolutely. And it's the funny thing is that knowing that you won't see this. Like I had to dig for the UAE information. Nobody's reporting on it. Congressional members aren't talking about it, and I just find that funny. But what are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I 100% agree. We need to have these people, the people that are being relieved from their work in the federal government. I think they need to be working in the private sector. Private sector jobs are much better for the economy than any federal government job that you can imagine. It is great for the economy. It brings a lot more people in the workforce, and that is what we need right now in America. And I think it's nearly time that we get rid of some of the nearly 3 million federal employees that we have. I mean, I understand that we do need to keep federal employees for the sake of keeping the government running. Right. I 100% agree. However, I want to make this a strong however. Members of Congress don't need 13 staffers to show up to vote one day. All right, I don't think we should be funding, taxpayers should be funding a staff of nearly 60 people for a senator from Omaha. I mean, from Nebraska. Sorry, that's not a state. From Nebraska. I don't think that's what we should be doing. Right. And then we have government agencies with nearly 600,000 employees. Now, the U.S. Postal Service should have 600,000, somewhere near that, for the employees. They're traveling across the country delivering mail. But should the Department of Veteran Affairs have nearly the most federal employees of any government agency? No. Because at the end of the day, when we cut these regulations, when we streamline all of the things that happen, when we get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse, you don't need that many employees, and that's why they're getting relieved. And Trump's economic policy is one of the best that we've seen such far coming into the new age of America, because we're seeing that energy is going up. We're seeing that there's more investment into America because of these regulations. At the end of the day, regulations are what is going to define this economy. If we have a government who is continuously telling people what they can do, how they must do it, and the process in which they must get there, we should not have America being the mother of businesses. You shouldn't, you don't need to tell me everything, what time my curfew is, what I can eat for breakfast. We don't need that. We need businesses to come into America to invest, make sure that they're following the laws and they're doing everything, right and legally. And then at the end of the day, you're bringing money to our economy. We appreciate you. We're going to make sure that you're doing good. That is the process in which we need America. Trump sees that. We've seen him build a business. Like Patrick was just saying, he's built a business. He's built multiple great businesses, multiple successful different organizations. That is how we need America to be treated right now. We need to be treated like a Fortune 500 company that's fast, efficient, and effective. And once we've got that, I mean, there's nothing that you can truly do to stop the progress of the American economy.
Absolutely. I mean, and nobody wants to talk about, like I just mentioned ago, how inflationary those governmental jobs are because they don't contribute to the GDP whatsoever. Yeah. And people want to sit here and they want to brag, oh, under Joe Biden, we had the record number of employment, not taking into factor that, they also included all of the rehires from the COVID situation. Right. Along with one of the largest increase in federal working employee numbers that we've ever seen in before. Like, these numbers do not help our economy whatsoever, and people need to start to realize what they're doing because the government is not allowing you to see the full truth behind everything, and that's the true issue. You want to sit here and be like, look at our job numbers, they're great, they're fantastic, and be like, but are they really? When you really dive into them, are they actually helping, drive economics in our economy so where, we have more GDP, which is going to allow us to be able to trade and barter more at the end of the road because we have more products, we have more services, whatnot, which will allow prices to be driven down. They don't want to have those conversations because they understand the American people don't understand how those work. That's why I love having somebody like Brian last week, where he's a little bit more in tune with the economic side of things. But when you take a look, I believe it was Caleb that just mentioned ago, the eggs, price of eggs and gas. I believe that was you actually, Patrick. And you were talking about all of that. But when I saw an article just this week where gas prices is $3.03, I believe, is the national average right now, and it's believed to go even under that this next week. No. But I saw articles talking about how, gas prices are down nationwide, but here's the reason why it's a bad thing. And I'm sitting here and I'm saying, how in the world can prices coming down be a bad thing? And they're trying to spin it as if this is going to hurt us in the long term. And I'm not understanding. It's like we've been complaining about gas prices for the last several years, and now we're starting to see actual trade deals and reopening of oil refinery and more drilling into the Gulf of America and all these other things that are allowing these prices to go down, but yet they still are complaining about it. I'll never understand it because this whole nonsense around the stock market, right? That's been the huge thing over the last month. But another thing they don't want to talk about is if you just zoom out a little bit, right, from the Dow. That's the biggest thing. The Dow's down to 1,500 points, blah, blah, blah. But if you zoom out 1 year, you'll see it happen 6 times in 2024 alone. What happened over the last month? 6 different times. Where was the news media then? Why wasn't people talking about, there's going to be a massive recession coming. We're going to have huge job losses. I'm losing so much in my 401k. But you see Americans absolutely blowing this up, acting as if we're heading for a recession when we're not even, we just hit month 2, because that is a clear indication to me. People don't know what a recession is. It's 2 consecutive quarters. FYI, for those that don't know what a quarter is, 6 months, guys. 6 months of GDP loss along with an unemployment rising at a certain rate. We're nowhere near that. We're not even through quarter 1. I mean, what are your thoughts on this whole nonsense around the Dow and the stock market?
Absolutely. Everything I'm about to say here is not my own knowledge. So shout out to the Patriots Den co-host Brian Fuentes for having those educational talks with me. The word economics scares people. It scares me, right? I'm scared right now. I'm shaking. Lost. I got a little sweat, you started breaking numbers down, but that's the truth. Economics scares people. Thinking of stocks scares people. That's why a lot of people don't invest in the stock market because they don't understand it. And so I'm not surprised. So all you got to do is stand up there in a nice little suit, comb your hair back a little bit, stand in front of some people and be like, I know what economics is. And you got their full attention. Yeah. And you can say the craziest thing of Dr. Seuss is going to write a book, and if you don't buy that book, the economy will crash. And the people are going to go buy Dr. Seuss's book because they don't understand it. The fact that a person can sit here and tell me that gas prices going down hurts the economy, are you crazy? Are you losing it? Like, what part of your brain makes you go, you know what, that guy in that suit right there,
It's a bright fella.
with the cane pointing at the president, has a very good point. Shout out to El Green. No,
But even real quick though, even in that article that I was just telling you about the gas prices, they weren't even able to elaborate on why.
yeah, no, there is no there's no real reason, because they hope that you just kind of read it and go, oh no, and keep scrolling to the next big subject. And the next big subject is gas prices down, economy bad. Oh no, you scroll. Dow Jones down, recession on the way. Oh no, you scroll again. Trump has brought back segregation.
What?
What?
They always like to round it back to the whole race issue.
What is going on?
How low gas prices affects the Black and Hispanic community. And now you're like, oh no, this man is so bad. Have I read any article? No, just a bunch of headlines from Harry Sisson on the TikTok article before he goes and has some explicit interactions with 11 girls.
All right.
We don't want to talk about Harry Sisson today, folks, but y'all can go look at that on your own time. But that's literally what's happening.
Yep.
And so when you have a party that's in disarray, this is that's the bare minimum. That it goes so much deeper into what they're actually trying to do and the message that they're actually trying to show.
Absolutely.
I mean, he hit it on the mark right there. That's absolutely right. If you can get a financial degree from any university, and where it could be the junior university at the in Atlantis, I don't know, wherever you get it from. If you get a financial degree, you get an economic degree, and you can make up a funny title. I love titles. You can make up a great title. Former senior advisor to the Deputy Secretary of Innovation and Inclusion, and now all of a sudden you are the
You're a
number one
genius.
economic expert in the world. You have a job at CNN as their economic policy advisor. MSNBC praises you as the next Alexander Hamilton.
Right.
That is what is the headlines that are leading our nation when it comes to the economy. It's from these people. John Stewart, who was the assistant to the president for the whatever the job is. You can come up with anything. You could
Assistant
be-
to the president of the Department of Education, secretary, panhandler.
You could have anything. You could have anything. Anything. At this point, they should just start picking up economic teachers from local high schools, and I feel like they would have a better knowledge of real economics. So, one of our teachers at my high school, the economic teacher, shout out to her, she's fantastic. But she 100% supports the policies in which President Trump are implementing, because she has an expert in she's an expert in economics. She's a small business owner. She understands what the effects of these things are, and she's like, well, these are good for the economy.
Right.
But then you go down the hallway to my government teacher, and he has a few signs. He has some political signs in his classroom, and it's like Beto O'Rourke and Colin Ara, and I'm like, okay.
Didn't Beto lose his city council?
Every
Yeah,
election
he-
he's
he-
ever been a part of.
every race.
Yeah.
I know, but then he's like, well, the policies, this economic advisor said this, and this economic advisor said that, and said, well, probably he was an advisor for a reason. Probably didn't get the job that he wanted. He had to take the advisor job because he doesn't know what he's doing. That is the people that are making these headlines, and we're supposed to believe them because they have a fancy title, because they have a degree from a fancy university that they probably got in due to DEI.
Right.
But I'm just saying that is what is happening in our country, and the fact that the Democratic Party is taking comfort in these policies and comfort in these headlines and are using these as a talking point shows exactly the policy and shows exactly the state of the Democratic Party that we currently live in. And I can tell you this much: the Democratic Party that we look at right now would have not survived a day in the Democratic Party of the 1930s. They would have been crucified at the stake for having these beliefs and thinking that these comments, because they were common sense thinking Democrats back then. They said, okay, well, men can't be women. Billy Bob can't choose at recess that he now wants to be Billy Gill or
Billy
Billy
Joanne.
Joe.
Billy Joanne.
You can't be Billy Joanne at recess. That is the policy that we need to get back. And if the Democratic Party really wants to win some elections, they need to start going back instead of going forward.
Right. And I mean, like you said it a minute ago, they're just pulling these experts because they have, a degree, and they can prop them up and say, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about because he's got a little piece of paper he paid tens of thousands of dollars for to pass the test, right? Yeah. Not knowing if he actually knows the economy or not. Because it's real simple to go to college, pay tens of thousands of dollars for a piece of paper that says, I know what I'm talking about, even though I can buy the same exact books on some resale site online and know more than you.
I'm in college right now, and I'm listening to these people who are in all these degrees, and I'm like, did you get that from ChatGPT or who told you that? Because you're wrong, bud.
Right.
And I'm a political science major. I'm looked down on because it's the easy criminal law kind of course. But I see the people on the college campus, and I'm like, if these are the next doctors and lawyers and teachers of the future, we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
I 100% agree, and 100% agree. The whole ChatGPT degrees
ChatGPT
thing. I mean,
degrees.
one of our I wouldn't say good friends, but one of the people that we know. His name is Marcus Emanuel. He's the chairman of the Texas High School Democrats. And
you're getting a cease and desist letter after this one, bud.
He's going to university, and he's gonna love this shout out that I'm going to give him. He's going to university to get a degree in gender studies.
No, he's not.
That's
a thing.
He wants a degree in gender studies. There's this video. I also saw this lady, I think it was a graduation, and they say, I'm graduating with a degree in the expertise of women equality and inclusion and the exploration of Native American history and the implementation of segregation. You can get a degree. I truly believe that what they do is that they have a wheel. All right. I think they have a wheel, and they spin the wheel, and they pick three names, just random letters, and that is your degree.
That's
you
your
have
degree.
You have to spend
4
$100,000 in 4 years, and you are now an expert in the inclusion of explosions on diversity and equality in the women anatomy. That makes you an expert.
Can we help Marcus get his degree real quick?
We cannot.
Marcus, let me help you get your degree real quick. Marcus, I know you want to go to gender study. Where's Mike? Is this my camera right here?
Camera right here.
Marcus, I know you want a degree in gender studies, so Professor Dr. Patrick Prudhomme is in the building today. Gender advisor. I'm a gender advisor, folks. Let me help you here. XY, you're a man. XX, you're a woman. Congratulations, Marcus. You've passed the class. You now have a degree in gender studies.
We need
Congratulations. I gave that to you
$100,000.
for free. I gave that to you for free. I expect my Cash App to ring here in a sec.
But even so, those are the type of people they're propping up as the experts over economy, and that's what I find so funny is that those same experts will sit here and try and use the stock market as if it's some kind of indication of how the economy is working. But in all reality, people need to understand that the stock market, if it crashes, the only people losing are the people you're wanting that should be paying their fair share is the uber rich, because in all reality, your little dollars that you're investing into your 401k and things like that, they're going to rebound. That's just how it works, because you look at the trend of the stock market. Yes, there's up and downs, but the problem is they want to hyper focus in on the day to day rather than zooming out to see it's an upwards trend no matter what. But again, you need to stop looking at these experts as if they're experts, because in all reality, they're all politically motivated to tell you what they feel is going to help their party or their political philosophy, rather than tell you what is actually happening. Because when you zoom out, you get an entirely different picture. Last year was terrible because 6 different times did the stock market drop over 2,000 points. Not just 15, but 2,000 points. Nobody wants to talk about that. Why? Because it was an upwards trend. And it's the same thing. We're starting to see the rebound of the Dow. We're seeing the NASDAQ. All of that starting to go up because all of the implementation of these new investments are starting to hit. And there's new talks of a trade deal with Canada and things of that nature coming in April because of the ending of the USMCA. And we're going to benefit ourselves through that. But there is a theory floating around online. Oh, no. And I know that you guys aren't like huge into economics because you just said you were a little scared about it. But so I'd love to hear Brian's take on this. So hopefully we can bring him back. But Brian, if you're listening, please tune into this. So the theory is Trump is trying to crash the stock market at least 20%, causing a flight into Treasury. This will cause the Fed to slash interest rates so he can refinance the debt near 0% and cause a deflationary spiral, which will lower the cost of everything. He also intends to use the tariffs as an incentive for companies to build in the U.S. to avoid having to pay them. The tariffs and the resulting global trade war will also force American farmers to sell more of their goods in the U.S. due to the retaliatory trade measures by our countries, which will directly lower the price of groceries here in the United States. And more than 94% of all stocks is owned by just 8% of the U.S. population. Trump is literally trying to is taking money from the rich and giving it to the poor through these means. And this is why Trump is playing a game of hokey pokey with tariffs. One day he has 25% on tariff on Mexico, and the next he doesn't. This is to cause extreme volatility in the market and a desperate need and demand to flee towards treasury bonds, which are much more stable by offering much lower potential for return. This is also why eggs are cheaper and why gas is going down as it is right now. So with that, I know that was a mouthful, but we can dive into it. I really like the first part because that is one thing that Donald Trump was talking about in the United States. Now, again, this is not me. This is just a theory. This is not something that we're advocating or standing behind, but it is interesting to talk about because when you really dive into it and you look back at what Donald Trump was talking about through his whole campaign, it seems like this is something that could be possible, like crashing the market to 20%, causing a flight to the Treasury. This will cause the Fed to slash interest rates. What did we just find out this week? What did Trump just tell the Treasury? What was he just arguing to the Treasury lead about the interest rates this last week, right? And I just saw this yesterday, and I'm like, Trump was just fighting with the lead of the Treasury talking about slashing interest rates. So what are your thoughts on it, Patrick?
Well, I could probably spell maybe 2 or 3 words you said there. But, in simple terms, what I'm thinking is happening is he's going to have everything be so unstable that the super rich are, they care so much about their little dollar are going to, say, wait a minute, this is scary. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm sorry. Take that money, out of the stocks, out of these other foreign countries and put it into the American government because they're going to find that that's where the stability is, which then causes, the other countries to go, oh, no, why would you do that? I'm not going to buy anything from you anymore, which means if order for those companies to sell, they have to sell to us because China and Canada and Mexico are no longer buying from you. So you have to go back to buy American, made in American. You got to go back to being there's the greatest 2 words ever put together. You got to go back to being America first. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. And he's an America first president. And so if that's what's happening, like I said, he's a businessman. These are the kind of things that he probably sits down and, lays down at night and he looks at Melania and he goes, Melania, we're going to drop the market so bad they're not going to know what to do. They're going to have to buy American and then we're going to cut the interest rates. It's going to be so big, so wonderful, quite frankly. And then he rolls over and goes to sleep and Melania's like, I don't know what just happened. Thank you. Melania goes, thank you so much, a little light. But that's what's happening, right? And so if that theory does turn out to be true, like I said, I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised because Trump is so strategic in everything that he does.
Right.
They're playing checkers while Trump is playing chess, which is why they find that he's always 45, sometimes 47 moves ahead of them. Y'all will catch what I just did there on the way home. And I love that. I support that a lot, right? And so that's why when a person comes to me and they're like, hey, are you surprised by what Trump is doing? Do you regret your vote? No, because I know what I voted for was not a fix for the now. It was a fix for the later. I voted for my generation when we're older, my kids, my grandchildren. That's what I'm voting for. I'm voting for the 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line. This election is what I saw a pastor say. This is kind of just the eye of the storm right now. It's the most peaceful, but we got to remember we're still right in the middle of it. This fight, this battle is far from over of keeping America first and keeping the people who aren't pro-America out of America. Right? So, and that's why when Trump does something like that, I say, you know what? That makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. The fight for America is not on the horizon. It's happening right now. And if we don't take a step, the Democrats are 100% going to decide it for us. They're going to decide the outcome for us. And this is a plan, like Patrick said. This is a plan for the future. President Trump will probably only serve 4 years. I'm gonna say probably because I'm hoping that he only serves he serves more than 4. But we know the Constitution.
I'm like, that's not Constitution.
Hey, that's gonna give me I'm gonna have some flashback for that. But at the end of the day, he is setting us up for the future. He's setting us up for policies that are going to make America more financially stable 20, 30 years down the line. And this, I believe, if this theory is true, this would be the best way to set up that framework. If we are simultaneously, strategically making the private sector rely more on America, then his policies are put into place. The implementation in which he wants to do is already happened now. Instead of trying to, because right now in the system that we're in and in the financial state that we're in, he is trying to get back so that he can get ahead. Okay, because we have to fix all of the horrid policies of Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, so that he can start to implement his own policy. He hasn't even started implementing some of the economic policy he wants to because he's still having to fight the aftermaths and the effects of the policies of Joe Biden. So when we start to, we have this plan and this theory, what it does is essentially it cuts a lot of Joe Biden's horrid economic policies so that he can start laying the framework for his policies. And that's what I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see him implement his own policies and allow for his really America First, America Works plan, getting the people back to work, getting people back at work, and ending with like the ending of the work from home policy, seeing that happening, seeing all of these things and seeing his plans start to take form is very, very inspirational. I want to try to quote Alexander Hamilton right now, but I'd
try
hate,
or do?
I know I want to, but I'd hate to have to misquote him. But he said in I think it's a 1791 report on the manufacturers. He said, I think it's if the collection of we're not going to start this.
He's going to paraphrase it, y'all.
Essentially, he just says that if the collection which America is producing is eluded and we're spinning that out, the product is damaged, and the effects to the treasury is much greater than it is to other countries. That happens. That means even back then we were putting America first. We had to be America first in the early foundations of America. Why can't we be America first now? Why do we continue to trade with countries or we continue to trade one-sided with countries who have nearly 50% tariffs? The European Union has nearly 50% tariffs on the United States. Why do we have to just put up with this when we can retaliate? That is the policy and that is, I believe, the mindset of President Trump. And I think that mindset is the best thing for America right now and the best thing moving forward.
Honestly, I wouldn't even call it a retaliation. I would just say make it fair trade, honestly. But I'm really excited to see what's going to happen into this into the summer, because when the reconciliation bill is, you're really going to see those the cuts, because that's where they promised, the Republicans promised that they were going to make the cuts, because they didn't do it in the spending bill that just passed. But they said we're going to make it sure that we can keep this open so we can get things like tax on tips, tax on overtime, get those things passed. But they're really going to attack the debt and out on the spending in the reconciliation bill. So I'm looking forward to that, because that, in conjunction with what he's doing with all these investments from foreign countries, along with domestic employers increasing their investment, we're going to see an explosion in our economy over the next few years, and people are just going to be outside their mind, which is why the Democrats are doing what they're doing with the identity politics and trying to blockade him in the court system and things of that nature, because they know what's coming. They know that the deals that he's doing on the side are absolutely phenomenal for our economy, and that's why you don't hear them talking about it. You don't see the news reporting about all these deals, but you have to go to all these little pundits like the Gateway Pundit and the James O'Keefes of the world, and for them to be able to report on it, because they know it's damaging to an already crippling Democratic platform. And that's why, like I say, to the people that listen here at the Legislative Lounge and everywhere else, go read. Stop trusting the representatives in Congress. Stop trusting the news. So with that in mind, I want y'all to give one little piece of advice to the American people on everything that we've talked about, or just, what you should do into the future and what makes us different from them.
Absolutely. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, black, white, Hispanic, Latino, rich, poor, fat, black, ugly. I don't care what you are. When you go vote, make an educated decision that's going to directly affect you. We're not in a time of wanting to play in the middle. This right now we are in a war between good versus evil. Are you going to vote with your wallet and with your country, or are you going to vote with the same side where the millionaires and billionaires who could care less about this country because at the drop of a hat they could get on their private jet and go anywhere else but here? Are you going to vote with them who really don't care where the country goes in the future? Or will you join the side that this is all we have, this is all we know? America is the world's first and only option. So as goes America, goes the rest of the world. So will you stick with that and make your vote the world's first and only option? Or will you join the side that could care less about the foundations of society, but want to do whatever they can to make sure that their pockets are lined better and keep you down? That's what the choice is.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100% agree. And I'll say this much. Ronald Reagan said freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And the more that we take that quote into account and the more that we continue, even after Ronald Reagan has passed away, the more we can remember what that quote means and understand the result that if we just let that quote be, let it aside, and we allow freedom to go into extinction, then everything that we fought from 1776 to right now to 2025, it means nothing. The greatest country on earth, the greatest country in the history of this planet means nothing because we decided to let freedom go extinct. We decided to let socialism and the socialism policies that are approaching the government of America, if we are allowing that to take over, then the most important people of our country, people like Alexander Hamilton, people like Martin Luther King, people like George Washington, I mean, these historical leaders who have built the fabric of this nation, their work goes extinct in the snap of a finger. And that is what is the most important thing about this policy right now. And I know I'm going to say people, I might be praising the man a little bit here, but right now, we have one of the greatest presidents in one of the times we need it most.
Made for such a time as this?
Made for such a time like this. Made for the moment and made in America. But made for such a time like this. For one of the most divisive, one of the most separated times in American history, we have a president whose sole purpose and his sole motto has always been America first and make America great again. We should not fear that.
Right.
We should not be scared of seeing America be put first. We should not be scared of seeing common sense return to the American household. We should embrace it. And I feel like that's the most important a message that we can talk about right now, a message of unity.
Right.
A message about one country, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Absolutely. Moving past all the identity politics and focusing on just Americans made, right? We're Americans all in ourselves. Doesn't matter what race, creed, background that you come from. We're American first. And that's what we really need to understand here. So as you guys go through this week, remember that. And as you start to see this information come out from all these politicians, again, read what they're talking about. Don't just take them on face. But we definitely want to thank you guys for coming in here. We got, Caleb and Patrick. You guys have been a wealth of knowledge. Welcome you guys back. And hopefully we can join you on the Patriots Den one day.
Absolutely.
And we want to thank Radio DaBang and obviously tune into the Legislative Lounge next week, Saturday, and obviously the Patriots Den on Thursday. So.